What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring. This is episode 116, and this week's guest, we have Jake Wilkes, who works for a recovery company called FireFly. Some of you may have heard of them, some of you may not. So, this should be a pretty interesting episode for you to kind of learn about who they are, what they are, and if you're a young strength coach and you need to kind of touch up on what recovery is, this will be a good one for you. So, we're going to get to the show, but real quick, let me just remind you our sponsor, TeamBuildr. Go ahead and check them out. If you're looking for something to help your athletes out with online training programs, viewable on the phone or on your iPad, make sure you check them out. Been using it since 2019 at Towson when I was there, so check it out. And without that, let's go to the show.
There it is.
What position did you play?
So I played running back at Stanford University, and we'd always have kind of Christmas morning would basically be when we get our spirit packs, right? When you'd have all the swag coming into the field house, and you get all the sick clothing. Which when I first got to Stanford, and for those listening, it's Sanford in Birmingham, Alabama. Stanford. I'm 5'7", 175. So I was definitely not Stanford material, but at Stanford, when I first got there, our sponsor was Russell, which was an absolute bummer because I was really excited to get some Nike stuff, and so we got a bunch of this Russell gear, and I was like sick. We got these white tube socks, like it was pretty terrible. So I ended up giving every single bit of those away. I gave every gear away, and the next year we went to Nike. So I was fortunately, for the next 3 years of my career, able to get Nike gear, and I still only have like 3 or 4 T-shirts from Stanford because, as you know, Justin, everybody wants team gear. So
It's the exclusive.
so I gave about probably 85-90% of my gear away. So that was always always good stuff.
I have a question for you. Were you like, so my buddy down at LSU, and this is his own words. This is not me saying this. This is me just repeating what he said. He's the head strength coach at LSU, Jake Flint. Great dude. Like,
Yeah,
awesome dude. And it must be in the name, right?
yeah, yeah,
Anyways, he said, he's like, yeah. He's like, I practiced football for Coach Kelly. I was like, huh? He's like, bro, he's like, I practiced. I was on the practice squad. Like, I didn't play football, right? So like, it's his way of making fun of himself. Like
yeah,
he played football, but he wasn't actually, on the roster playing on
yeah,
game day.
right, yeah,
But I always laugh at that because it's like to one have the ability to laugh at yourself. Like that's
yeah.
awesome. But yeah, no, shout out to all those football players listening that if you played and you weren't on the team, like, I don't know how you did it. Like, I used
Dude.
to tell the guys that at Iowa, when I was at Towson, or even at, whatchamacallit, at Maryland, like, I don't know
Yeah,
how you do it. Like,
dude.
there's the fact that you can be on the team and not play on Saturdays, I'm too vain. Like, fuck that.
That's a great point. I was so again I came to Sanford. Sanford's a Division I FCS school, so pretty highly competitive.
Heck yeah.
At a sense of college football. I'm again 5'7", 175 pounds, severely undersized. Uh, I I actually committed to a college called Carson Newman in
Oh,
Tennessee.
shoot.
Uh,
Word? I know that. That's my cousin played baseball there.
Yeah, it's a good school. I mean, it's a very competitive D2 program. They have great facilities, and so I was excited to go to Carson Newman. I was like, this could be a really, a good spot for me. But then, the day before National Signing Day, Pat Sullivan, who was the head coach at Stanford at that time, he called me and was like, "Hey, Jake, we have to have a running back. You were on our board." Because they called me after my senior year and basically said they weren't offering a running back because they didn't have a scholarship allotted to running backs this year because their roster was full. So I didn't really give Sanford any thought. And then the day before signing day, Pat called me up. He said, "Hey, could you meet at the field house today?" And I was like, "Heck yeah!" So I went down, and
Duh.
basically they said that Sanford's a very like academic school, so they had a running back that couldn't make the grades and dropped out, and they had a running back that went full time to pharmacy school because so anyways, 2 running backs were down, and they're like, "Hey, we need a running back to commit like tomorrow during signing day." So they gave me like a little token scholarship, and gave me a partial academic, partial football, but it was
That's
very
awesome.
minimal. And so I told my parents, I was like, "Hey, like, Sanford's expensive, so we're gonna have to take out some loans and stuff. But thankfully, Coach Sullivan and Brandon Hatcher, who was the recruiting coordinator at the time, was like, "Hey, we really think you could, earn a spot here." Which I think they tell every walk on in the world that, just so you know, they talk you up like, "Dude, you can do this. You can earn it." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I can do this." But to make a long story short, when you come in as an invited walk on, you're basically the bottom of the totem pole. And my strength coach was Coach Ryan Davis, who's now the head strength coach at Maryland. So shout out to RD. I'm not gonna lie, RD treated us like absolute dog poop.
Man, fuck that. Okay, I'm gonna interject. Like, fuck that. That pisses me off. Like,
Man.
that shit pisses me off, man. Because like, I don't know if he treated you poorly because you're a walk on, and I'll let you continue the story, but I'll never forget, man. Peter Picar, when I was at Iowa, he's like, man, I just want to say I respect the fact that you didn't treat me any differently because I'm a walk on. I was like, Picar, I didn't even know you were a fucking walk on. Like, I'm an assistant strength coach. I'm not in the meetings and knowing who's on scholarship and who's not. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm here just to treat you guys. So fuck that, man. Go ahead.
Well, it was it's his first. So this is RD was coming from Alabama. It was his first head strength coach role, and he put us all in the same room, and he was like, we had all the walk-ons in the room. He's like, I don't know if he was trying like a scare tactic or like trying to weed out the weak, but he was like, raise your hand if you think you're ever going to see the field or something. And I'm like, boom, baby, like I'm seeing the field. And he was like, well, you're a dumbass and stuff like. So he would just like call you out and all this stuff.
My
but
gosh.
But I do want to give RD some. Ryan actually became the probably the most pivotal part of my career. Is he would.
Go.
I mean, we had I don't know how many 32 signees. 32 committed to Sanford. I graduated with like 8. At the end of the 4 years. RD really pushed me as a young kid. He laid it into me as far as instilling the backgrounds of what it takes to play college football. And he put about 25 pounds of size on me. I ended up, becoming one of the leaders in the weight room, and was actually awarded a full scholarship my junior year. So
good for you.
I ended up making it into the rotation. RD became my voice. As you guys know in the podcast, the strength coaches are the voice of the team. They know who's putting in the work.
We hope so.
They should be. 90% of what you do is in the strength conditioning room. And the strength coaches know who the dogs are, right? I mean, who's going to be ready to play on Saturday. Who's putting in the work, and they should advocate for those athletes to the head coach. And I think Coach RD and Coach Ben Ashford. Ben Ashford is the head strength coach at Marshall now, but he came in. RD left my junior year. BA came in my junior year, and it was 2 days before the first game of my junior year is when Coach Hatcher called me into the office and awarded me a scholarship, and it was obviously the greatest day of my life.
Right? They had to call your parents right away. Like,
oh, dude. Well, it was funny because we did disciplinary. So when we did our team meetings, we would have like our special teams meetings, and then immediately after special teams, the head coach would come in and call out all the athletes that he needed to see for a disciplinary talk before practice.
Yeah, like you missed academics, you missed whatever.
Yeah. So everybody that's an athlete on the call knows what I'm talking about. But I was never called on that. I was a good student, double major. Never got into trouble.
Never did nothing wrong.
I was just a follow the rules kind of guy, and I'll never forget.
Mom and dad would have come down on you, bro.
Oh shoot, yeah, I would have still got back to the woodshed and got spanked. But I'll never forget Coach Hatcher comes out there and he's naming all the traditional guys that had to see him basically every day. And then he goes, and I want to see Jake Wilkes, and everyone's like, what shit? Like, what the hell? They're going nuts. And I remember thinking, I was racking my brain, like, what did I do? Like, what is going on? I'm trying to think of everything. And he calls me into the office, and he actually didn't say anything. He just slid his office phone across, and he said, hey, and he paused for like 20 seconds. So I didn't know what was happening. And Coach Hatcher, he starts tearing up, man. I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, now, boy, I want you to call your dad. And I'm like, I'm like, still like, what is going on? He's like, put you on a full ride today. And dude, I lost it, man. And then the rest of the coaches came running into the, to his office, and it was awesome. But, it was a 3 years in the making, right? Where when you're a walk on, you have to do everything perfect. You have to perform, you have to outperform everyone in scrimmages. You got to do everything right. Whereas the scholarship kids, they can make 50 mistakes of practice and be fine. So it was definitely a learning experience. I'm super happy that I sticked it out. And, there was only me and two other walk-ons that actually lasted all 4 years, from the class that came in with me. So it was pretty crazy. But anyways, we'll get into recovery. I'll lead it with this though. We'll get into the FireFly too. But I ended up being Lima, a pretty consistent backup. So I was always like number 2 on the depth chart, or a 2 or 3 depending on how good our backfield was that season. But everybody on the call knows when you're the second string running back, you get 90% of the reps in practice. 90%, right? The starting running backs, the starting receivers, the starting players, they play. They practice very minimal. They get every recovery treatment in the world. They're
And
treated
opportunity
like
to recover. Yeah.
but it's the backups, right? Shout out to the backups, the second and third strings
Amen.
that are getting, 4 or 5 miles a day at practice, running 50,000 routes. And then you get in the athletic training room, all the seats are filled with the first stringers. They're getting the Normatechs, they're getting the game readies. And then you're left in the foam roller for 10 minutes in the corner. And then you come back to practice the next day feeling like the freaking Tin Man. So I guess that will lead us into why I love FireFly, Justin. If that's not a good intro, I don't know what is.
Listen, I can double down and confirm that for you, because first of all, I was advocating that when I was at Towson. I'm like, listen, we got to find a way to either change how we practice or get more people on the roster, because like I was thinking, as an offensive lineman, first of all, I played offensive line. I was a starter. I was one of the good ones. So I did get my rest so that way I could play well on Saturday. Like I didn't have to be in the twos if we were ever short. Well, I was talking about like at Towson.
Yep.
If you don't even have 15, like there was times we were going into camp, didn't even have 15 offensive linemen on the roster going into camp. So you don't even have a 3 deep O line. So that means one of your twos is doing some 3 reps.
Yeah.
And so that means you might have some of your ones doing some 2 reps. I was like, we're wearing these dudes down. Like you either got to change how we're practicing or get more people on the roster, because they're just, there's more tread on the tire getting worn off. So
Yeah.
when you have more tread on the tire being worn off, what should you do?
Oh man, great question. The answer is FireFly. Just, golly, it's hard for student athletes because you would say put more effort into your recovery, right? Or you would recommend those athletes trying to focus on their bodies more. But then, as a college athlete, you're not professional yet, so it's not your full-time job, right? So then you're trying to balance a heavy class schedule, taking your girlfriend on dates and being involved on campus. So, I think the pain point for student athletes is not only taking care of their body, it's finding the time to do that. You're limited to your treatment sessions. You're already in the field house for 40 hours a week. And that's not just football. We could talk about all sports, especially the Olympic programs that are playing, they have 2 to 3 days to recover, not a full week.
Oh, or they
You're
have
playing,
multiple competitions and
or baseball,
travel.
you're playing double headers.
Oh, hockey, college hockey.
It's insane.
Wow.
The demand never stops, right? Like as a college athlete, you're basically just putting miles and miles, and you're putting duct tape over your body to make sure, semi ready to play. But even when I played at Sanford, from day 0, or actually from the start of camp, right? I mean, from the camp to the end of the season, your body's never at peak performance ever again. Like you're always playing. Like our coach used to ask us, like, "Hey, where are you at right now?" And I'd be like, "I'm like 70%." Like I'm at, and then we'd had some players be like, the drama queens would be like, "0, coach, I'm at 2%. I can't even move." Right. So you have all these different, I guess, levels of performance, and Whoop, technology these days are actually able to tell you where you're at. But we were just guesstimate. We were like, all right, we're probably close to it. But I think that's why there's been such a push. You're seeing it, all over. It's being shared more and more I would think in the college landscape, there's never been a higher emphasis on athlete recovery, and athletes taking care of the bodies, from LeBron James to Patrick Mahomes to to you name it. But that's why colleges are spending more money on recovery. That's why professional athletes, if they have the resources, are spending millions of dollars on rehab and recovery. They have their own PTs, they have their own body coaches, and it's because your body is your greatest. It's your greatest weapon. Like it's what's played on the field every day. So um, all that is a great landscape for why our technology has become so relevant, and is really becoming, when it comes to the athletic recovery space, one of the primary tools that these athletes are choosing, for their day-to-day recovery efforts.
I 100% agree. I mean, shoot, for our listeners out there, we'll link it in the show notes. But Jake, we've known each other for what, three? Like we're in year three
Almost
of
four
knowing
years.
each other. Yeah,
Yep.
4 years. Like I'm saying, like we've been working together from. Had him at Towson, swear by him for whether we were flying, whether we were driving, acute ankle injuries. Like it was, I'll tell you what, and like, listen, you can talk about the actual science behind it. I will also say, like, I've read a bunch of books about the placebo effect, and I'm not saying that the Firefly is a placebo. I'm going on
Every
record saying that right now.
technology,
But
placebo effect.
like, I'm just saying there is something about when an athlete has an acute injury and you're like, hey, I got you. This is
Yep.
something that is going to help you and you can wear it a lot and like instantaneously. And then when I have the athletic trainer being like, hey, yeah, man, make sure you get your fire. Like, there's something to that to make the kid feel like, okay, not only am I getting something that is going to help me, but I'm being told it and it does work, right? Like my wife and I were talking about this when we finished up our run today, like ethically telling people to take things that you don't, and like no, like this is something that I 100% agree in, and the kids, like they would respect it. Like I'll never forget, like one of our punters, he got hurt, he got illegally run into in one game. He was our kickoff guy and our punter, not all American, all conference, but then transferred out and went FBS, went to the ACC. And he felt like he was being taken care of because it's like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm gonna make sure your plant leg feels good. Like, so there's something to it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And the
What
portability is the biggest part. Like that's what you'll talk about. Like,
Yeah, and for the listeners out there, do you want me to kind of give a brief little overview of Firefly and just
yeah, talk about the genesis. I mean, and again, so I'll link to our prior conversation for our listeners, but we've had Jake on before. Yeah, just talk about the genesis, a quick version. Like I said, I'll link it down so you don't have to go into as much depth because we've talked
Yep.
about it on the show before. But yeah, just remind everybody, and I mean, shoot, remind me.
Yeah. So the origin story of Firefly is pretty cool because it started on the medical side, which is nice because when you talk about a recovery technology, we have all the clinical research, the FDA approvals, which is when it comes to when we get these in the hands of the athletic trainer, and the strength coaches, they want to know what is the background of the technology. This device, Firefly, is the over the counter or the consumer version of a medical device called the Gecko. The Gecko is FDA approved for preventing blood clots, reducing swelling, and healing wounds faster post surgery. So, for those listening, if you've ever had lower extremity surgery, your parents have had knee replacement, or any type of lower extremity surgery in the hospitals, they're a lot of times putting on what's called a sequential compression device, an SCD sleeve or an IPC sleeve. In our world, that's a recovery boot. So one of those space boots, leg squeezers, Normatex, Therabody, boots, whatever you're using for pneumatic compression. In the hospitals, they just call those SCD sleeves and IPC sleeves. It's one thing to be in a Normatec for 20 to 40 minutes, which is easy and it works and it's great. It's another to be put in a compression boot for 24 hours, 3 to 6 days post surgery. Nobody wants to do that, right? So,
No.
our founder, his name is Anthony Genstead. He's been in the medical distribution world for about 27 years. So basically, he sells products to the surgery centers to help with post-operative care, whether that's cold compression devices, whether that's wheelchairs, whether that's knee braces. It's just a bag of products that he sells to help with, the post-operative surgical care centers. One of the products he was selling was compression boots. So he was selling compression boots to the surgery centers to help with reducing, swelling and helping prevent blood clots. But he was constantly getting complaints from the surgery centers that patients weren't wearing them or tolerating them, right? So they'd be sent home with the leg squeezer, and they'd wear it for 2 hours, take it off, and get a blood clot at night because they weren't wearing their compression boots. So the devices only work if you wear them. And therefore, Anthony was like, well, man, there's got to be a better option than these like giant leg squeezers that are, keeps people stuck in the bed. So he just did a good old fashioned Google search. He went to the website, typed in wearable portable DVT prevention. DVT is just deep vein thrombosis. And he found this product in the UK called the Gecko. It was winning awards for preventing blood clots, and it was the size of an Apple Watch. So he was really intrigued about how this little sticker for the leg could compete against these big pneumatic compression boots. And so, that was his first kind of interest in the technology, was just something that would be better for his patients. But when he flew out to meet with First Kind Medical, which owns the patent for the Gecko and the FireFly, what they figured out is that instead of massaging and squeezing the lower extremities to get that lymphatic return, you could actually modify the frequencies of a stem device. So for the listeners on the call, you're probably familiar with muscle stem, Mark Pro, Compex, Power Dot, Russian stem, E-stem. There's a million types of stem on the market. But what the medical company figured out is that you could actually modify the frequencies to actually stimulate the nerve directly without fatiguing the muscles of the nerve. So instead of targeting a muscle group, they targeted the peroneal nerve, which the peroneal nerve starts at the top of the hips, wraps around the fibular head, and goes all the way down to the toes. And what they figured out is that when you comfortably and safely stimulate that nerve, the peroneal nerve actually controls the motor functions of the foot and the ankle. So what they figured out is you could put a little sticker, a little NMES device around the nerve. When you stimulate the nerve, it will cause the foot to dorsiflex or flutter. And so in our world, whoever's used FireFly before knows you get this little FireFly flutter. But in the medical space, it's basically just an ankle pump. So it's just a soleus pump. So if you're a strength coach or an athletic trainer and you've had an athlete get injured and you've ever told them to go to the room, put their feet above their head and pump their ankle, all you're doing is moving blood. And that's what FireFly and Gecko are doing. So in layman's terms, instead of squeezing the lower extremity to get blood passively back to the body or back to the heart, you're using a stem to pump the ankle, and that in return is dynamically and systemically moving blood back to the heart for you. So it's really unique, but it's super simple, right? So pumping the ankle actually is 3 times more effective than massaging the legs in a compression boot. And that's clinical research. So the research on the Gecko and the FireFly actually shows that when you stimulate the peroneal nerve, because that nerve runs the entire length of the leg, you actually increase blood flow from hip to toe by 400%, whereas pneumatic compression is 117. So in the medical world, it's 3 times more effective than the standard of care, which Anthony was obviously excited about. And the research is sound because they did speckle and Doppler radar actually showing the blood flow in the leg. They measured this extensively. And, if you look on our website or anywhere on our ads, you're going to see the word 400%. It's not a number we made up. It's actually a clinically validated number that was done in the medical world. So for those that are hating out there, like 400% blood flow, impossible, just check the research out. It's like we didn't come up with it. Yeah, it's that good. Anyways, Anthony, again, to start from the origin story, when Anthony realized that this product was flushing the lower extremities by 400%, and it was also increasing venous and arterial flow, which means you're just getting that systemic blood flow, it was having a huge effect not only on preventing blood clots, because, when it pulses the nerve, it prevents stasis, which means that blood is constantly moving. So it's pumping blood every second on the second, which in the medical world means it would be impossible to get a blood clot using the Gecko. So it kind of clicked that box. But then secondarily, because it's flushing the lower extremity so efficiently, it was helping with the swelling and it was helping heal the wound faster. So Anthony he became the sole distributor for the Gecko, which is the medical device. He brought the Gecko to the US and was selling the Gecko to the surgery centers in California. The surgery centers in California were super excited because they had a product that was actually patient compliant. Patients actually worked. And not only that, but they were seeing swelling reduction like 3 times faster than their normal standard of care. So when they would send a patient home with total knee replacement, ankle surgery, knee surgery, hip surgery, it was a sticker. And I don't know if people can see my screen, but this is the size of the FireFly. I mean, when I say a sticker, it's an Apple Watch with no strings, no wires, no attachments. The Gecko is the exact same device. It's just all white and it says Gecko. But so compression boot, FireFly. It's a no-brainer. It's super portable, and the patients in the medical space loved it. Now, fast forward to how we have FireFly, Justin, is Anthony was never really in the sports recovery business. He was always in medical DME post-operative business, but he also did a lot of the bracing. So like people on this call are probably familiar with the Don Joy knee braces that all the office linemen are wearing. Anthony started the Don Joy rep early on his career, and he became the go-to bracing guy in California. So he did like Shaquille O'Neal's knee braces. He did all the King's knee braces. So he was very plugged in to the physicians and the sports medicine professionals in the college and pro sports. He did all the USC linemen's knee braces. So obviously, with those connections, when the surgery center started reporting such great outcomes with the gecko, it only took a couple. It didn't take very long for the physicians, the PTs, and the ATs that work for the pro teams to contact Anthony about, hey, this product is doing extremely well in the medical space, but I think it makes a lot of sense in the athletic recovery and performance space because we're getting constant complaints from our athletic trainers having to lug around these heavy modalities when we travel. Could we not just slap this little device on our athletes' legs on flights and be good to go? And so that's when Anthony was like, well, man, this could be a home run. The FireFly was originally being used by the European rugby and Premier League soccer teams. So the FireFly was being used in the UK early, like 2014. Nobody in the US knew about it. So Anthony approached, the First Kind Medical and said, hey, can I bring FireFly to the US? So I know that was not a short story, but basically Anthony brought FireFly to the US in 2017 and started selling it to a couple of teams in his backyard. We're based out of Orange County. So the first teams to start using FireFly were the Lakers, Kings, Ducks, Dodgers, USC. Russ Romano was the first, one of the first colleges to implement it, kind of program wide. I was brought on as employee number one in 2018 because Anthony was still running, his medical business, and he needed somebody to help run sales to grow this in the college and pro sports market. It was pretty, we had a really, great kind of growth trajectory once teams started realizing how effective the device was. And, in the college and pro world, people talk, it spreads. But that was kind of the background, to our technology. We're now in well over 500 college and pro teams. So we've grown tremendously over the past couple of years. The product is basically becoming, an everyday recovery modality for athletes. It's one thing, to be recovering for 20 to 40 minutes post practice, whether that's hopping in the cold tub, whether that's getting in a compression boot, whether that's doing muscle stem. All those are limited mostly to the training room. You're always stuck either sharing the modality, stuck in the training room, and have a short 20 to 40 minute window, which, Justin, when you look at all the research, there's not much showing that 20 to 40 minutes does anything to your to your return to baseline or to getting your body back, to peak performance. So that's where the FireFly can be a really good addition. And here's the deal, guys. Anytime you can use something in the athletic training room is great. I used to love the compression boots. I used to love game readies. The problem was I only got to use them once or twice a month because they were always in use and I never had any time. So where the FireFly is adding a ton of value for teams is that athletes can actually put these on post practice, walk out of the facility with them, and wear them for the next 2 to 4 hours while they're in the cafeteria or while they're hanging out with their friends or while they're studying. So there's no limitations toward portability. And again, if we go back to the research, when it comes to recovery, there's sleep, there's nutrition, and then there's blood flow. The more blood flow you can get, the better. And if you can be in a device that's flushing the legs, you're getting 400% blood flow throughout the lower extremities for 2 to 4 hours. Yeah, you're going to have fresh legs. Yeah, you're going to feel better. For the listeners on here, my advice would be do a leg day workout and then put a FireFly on, wear it for 2 hours, see how you feel the next day. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? And that's where we're seeing teams that have, extremely, when they have a lot of fatigue, they're able to utilize longer treatment sessions, and the devices again comes in a pack like this. There's 2 units in a pack. If you're an athletic trainer or a shrink coach and you've got 25 athletes you're trying to recover, you can pack 25 of these in a duffel bag, pass them out, and every single player on your team or your ones and twos, your top, your high minute players can get 2 to 4 hours of recovery effortlessly. So, in my mind, and when I speak to athletic trainers that are implementing this, and when I speak to strength coaches that are implementing this correctly, their feedback is there's no reason why we shouldn't do this. There's literally no reason. It doesn't take effort. Our athletes can use it on the go, and we can get them out of our, we can get them out of our training room. So, anyways, I'll pause just because I think I talked for about 10, 12 minutes straight there. So I'm gonna let you do your thing.
Quick break from the show to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out and it helps you be notified when we have new content get released. So again, please hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content. And with that, let's get back to the show.
This is your
Yeah,
show,
no,
Don.
no. Like, I'm glad you said it all though, because I agree. And I was just talking with a Power Five football strength coach the other day, and he's like, picking my brain, like, okay, this is one of his first camps, and he's like, what's one of the best recovery things that you've ever done? And I was like, I mean, mass produced things. I was like, I love. He asked if I do RPR. I was like, yeah, I do. I was like, but I like the Signal Six stuff because it's a little
Yep.
bit more mass producible. I was like, but then I also was like, look, I'm a big fan of these because the same thing you said, like I can slap it on a bunch of people. They can use it. They can go about it. I'd even have them do it with the schedule that we had. We would lift meet practice, and I had some of my dudes that were diehards. They would wear the FireFly in meetings after lift before practice, or if it was a day that we didn't even lift, they would be wearing them in meetings before practice so their legs weren't fatigued from just sitting down in meetings. And I
I'm
think that would be beneficial whether you practice in the morning or the afternoon.
no, I'm glad you said that. I was a year, maybe 2 years ago. Alabama had just won the national championship, and their Alabama football might be our one of our, if not the biggest user of the technology. They've, Jeff Allen and his team have really, done a great job, obviously. But we're thankful to have the opportunity to work with them closely. And so I took their staff to dinner, and I was just asking, like, hey, where are you guys finding the most value using FireFly? I know you use a lot of them. Give me some of the use cases. And one of the things they mentioned was, well, Jake, we had a lot of complaints from our student athletes coming to practice not feeling prepared to practice, like their bodies were stiff. It took them a while to warm up. It took them a while to feel like they were ready to perform coming onto the practice field. And so we just started implementing it. We put it on our top guys that had these complaints, and they'd use Firefly in their pre-practice meetings while they're sitting down watching film for 2 to 3 hours, right?
You hear
And
that, boys at Towson? Fucking doing the same shit for you that they did at Alabama.
that's
All right,
right.
I had you. I had you fucking back, man. I
Uh,
had your back.
It's true though, man. Like even when I played at Sanford, right? Our protocols were we'd come to the field house around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we were mandatory tape, right? If you were a
Yep.
skilled player, you were taped mandatory, and so we'd get taped around 12, and then we'd get into our special teams meeting around 1:30, 1:45,
Mm-hmm.
and then we
Mm-hmm.
hit the field at around 4 o'clock. So let me explain this. You're in some tight ass ankle tape with no blood flow to your freaking feet, and then you're gonna go sit down for 3.5 hours. And then guess what the strength coach is doing when you're taking the field? Sprint your ass on the field. You better hit the field running, right? And so
This is an opportunity. No jog, no walking on the
yeah, oh
field.
no.
Right?
So
Oh
you're trying to sprint onto the field, yet alone your legs feel like they're bricks. So I mean, and you know, and so I was like, well, gosh, Gorby was the athletic trainer that I was talking with. I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's freaking brilliant. Like I would have loved to have some type of, anything, literally anything to get blood flow to my feet. They were freaking purple, by the time I got to practice. So there's lots of different ways to utilize the device. I mean, I think the best way to say it is anytime you think blood flow can help the body, right? And we could speak about pre-practice, we could speak about post-practice, we could speak about flights, travel. Obviously, Justin, we were probably going to get into that. That's kind of been our bread and butter when teams are on airplanes or bus rides. Nobody's wearing anything on airplanes and bus rides unless you're passing around, some type of compression boot, or if you're sharing, whatever it is, compression stock.
Maybe you're having some ice. Like maybe that's the one.
Maybe,
Like, but you're still taping that on. Like that would be like if people are going to be like, oh, they're going to do like that would be something, I guess.
yeah. There's not really a good solution. I mean,
No,
again, do 9 hour bus rides to BMI, which 9 hours
that's
bus.
so the guy that was at Towson, Shinnick, who he was coming from Division Two world. like you just said, 9 hour, 7 hour bus rides. They used to stop halfway to move the kids. So like
Yeah.
this is like this fucking happening. Like,
Oh,
and it's such an ingrained thing in these coaches that have to drive that far. If you're NIA, high school, Division II, like I said, he literally was like, oh, Justin, start thinking about when we have bus trips, like we're gonna have to stop halfway. I'm like, Coach, we're talking like a 3 hour bus ride. Like, I mean, it again. I was like, hey, we got this device.
yeah.
We don't need to stop.
Yeah.
And I mean, 3 hours, like that's literally what you
Oh,
used to do, then stop and go. So
yeah. 3 hours for us was the shortest trip we'd go to. I mean, I mean, our trips were 3, 6, 8, 9 hours. So you're talking about getting off a bus, 9 hour bus ride, and then going to sit in what? What do you do after you get to a hotel? You
you
go to
sit
meet.
on the, yeah,
You
oh,
go to
yeah,
meetings. You go to meetings. You sit more, and then you're expected to play at 11 a.m. So having a device like the FireFly where you can put it on the leg, it's simple. It's a sticker. You put it on the athlete's leg. You know, you're traveling 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever it is. Another study that we have is basically showing when you pump your ankle, you're moving blood back to the heart, similar to walking. You get essentially 62% of the blood flow that you'd get from ambulation or walking. You actually get that sitting down passively in a FireFly. So that's a ton of blood flow to get while sitting passive. Well, you think about being on a 6 hour bus ride. You're non-load bearing, right? So you're not fatiguing your body, but you're getting constant blood flow, similar to a recovery walk. So, I mean, or at altitude, right? When teams are flying, we have a bunch of, if you guys follow me, if you don't follow me on LinkedIn, shout out, you should. But I've been doing a couple of LinkedIn posts recently because there's a lot of men's basketball programs flying for their foreign tour. There's tons of basketball programs, women's and men's, that are on their foreign tours this summer, going from everywhere from Italy to to, gosh, I saw Sweden, so all over the place. And the past two posts, one was UConn men's basketball national championships. We're flying to flying to uh, I think Europe, wearing the FireFly devices. The post before that was Tennessee basketball. So you're talking about some of the top teams in the country that are flying international, with FireFly, because if they can get 20 pairs of FireFly can fit in the athletic trainer's duffel bag when they get on the plane, and they can pass out a little sticker for all 25 and 30 of their players and get constant blood flow. What's the alternative? There's really not one, right? You're not bringing 20 compression boots on a plane. You're not passing out 20 Mark Pros on a plane. So this is one of the few modalities that allows athletes to get constant blood flow, and your whole team can recover on a flight. I'll even speak again towards post practice, or excuse me, post game, post event. When you're Olympic sports, let's just say soccer, you're playing usually on a Thursday, Saturday. Uh, you're playing about 2 to 3 games. In between, you got to travel and recover. You think about a 2 to 4 hour bus ride. If you're waiting 2 to 4 hours to do any type of recovery till you get back to the facility, you've already got all that blood sitting in the athlete's legs. The biggest feedback we have from a lot of our Olympics teams is, well, man, we can put these on immediately post game, and we can take a 4 hour bus ride, and we can get our athletes 4 hours of recovery before the other team is even back to the field house. I mean, it's a tremendous advantage, especially because that compounds over time, right? If you're constantly having to do these quick treatments after these athletes have been extremely fatigued, and they go sit on a bus for 4 to 6 hours, all that blood's in their legs. They come back to the field house, and then you practice the next day, so you don't have any time to recover. And by the time they get out to practice, they're even more fatigued. So I do think the recovery window, the recovery times, is extremely important for athletes. And if you're an athletic trainer or a strength coach, and you could leverage a 4 hour flight, a 4 hour bus ride, and turn that into 4 hours of recovery, you are leaps and bounds above the other team. And I think that's why so many of our Olympic sports have started, utilizing this after every game.
I know. I mean, I personally will, like, if we're on a long flight, I'd be like, or a long ride, whether it's personal or if we were doing a travel, I'd be doing the same thing because I'm like, all right, I got to get work done. Like, let me be productive during this time. All right, I'm going to get work done. I'm going to program. I'm going to read, whatever. And then it's like, all right, I'm not only going to do that, but I'm going to make sure that my leg. And I'll tell you what, it is crazy how my legs don't feel, like you said, that dead feeling from just sitting and doing nothing. And then especially, like, yes, do you, that's the thing about with athletes. It's like, look, do you have to do one extra thing after the game? Yes. you do have to put this on after, and you make sure you put it on the right spot. But you know what? When you get back to the facility, you feel so much fucking better. Like, shut up, just
Yeah,
do it.
it's
And
easy.
like that was my pitch. I was like, just do it. Like,
Do it.
try it. I'm not making you,
Yeah.
but like when the kids that liked it did it, and they're like, then they see they're like, yeah, I ain't tired. It's like there's a reason. Like, I have limited words that I'm gonna say. I'm not just gonna say this just because. Like, I'm
Yeah.
literally here to help you.
Yeah, and it's almost dummy proof, right? When you think about an athlete tool, you need a dummy proof modality. I mean, all you have to teach your athlete
Put
is where
this
the fibular
here.
head.
Like,
Uh, you point to the fibular head, and then this little sticker. When you look at these arrows, there's an X marks the spot that goes directly on top of the fibular head. And I get asked a lot of times, and you're going to get asked this when you're implementing it. This goes on the fibular head, which is right below the knee. Most of the time, people think I'm just getting blood flow to the calf, right? I'm getting blood flow to where this is being put on. The unique thing about the FireFly is it's not a muscle stem, so you're not just getting blood flow to a certain area because of the muscular contractions. When you stimulate the peroneal nerve, even though you're putting this below the knee, you get an increase of blood flow by 400% throughout the whole leg, from hip to toe. So even though it's below the knee, you're getting the same amount of blood flow in the hamstring, the quad, the glutes, everything. So just keep that in mind, because that's kind of one of the biggest questions we get asked is like, well, Jake, can I put this on my hamstring? You don't need to. You put it below the knee and it works just the same. The reason why we put it on the fibular head is because where the peroneal nerve runs through the calf is where it's most superficial and where it's the easiest to stimulate it, using the technology. So for lower extremity, any type of injury, swelling, you know, anything you have as far as lower extremity, you'd still put it on the fibular head. Now, I do want to make a little caveat and just describe this real fast, because we're going to get asked this question too. What about upper extremity, right? Justin's probably going to ask that, or somebody's going to ask that. The patent on the technology is to be able to stimulate the peripheral nervous system safely and comfortably. The peripheral nervous system in the upper extremity, there's a couple of nerves you can stimulate: radial, median, brachial, ulnar. They're all on the arm, and you can stimulate it via the FireFly. All of our clinical research is on the peroneal nerve, so we don't advertise it, or we don't put a lot of stuff out there on the upper extremity, but we do have to let teams know that it's being used on the upper extremity, because more and more teams are having amazing feedback. We're in 28 of the 30 MLB teams now, so we become
word?
one of the more adopted technologies for the MLB space. Yes, they're using it on flights. Obviously, they're playing 162 plus games a year. They're flying every day, so it makes a lot of sense. But when we went out to the MLB winter meetings last year, we were blown away about how many teams were already using on the upper extremity with their pitchers daily. So we did a lot of questions, and a lot of searching on our end to figure out how our teams best implementing on the upper extremity. Now we're getting more and more football players. We had a lot of exposure last year when Georgia was playing in the national championship game. Ron Corson over at Georgia, they implemented it last season for recovery and travel and all the above. But he shot me a text, or he called me mid-season and was asking about upper extremity placements and stuff. And I told him where to place it, and kind of gave him some of the feedback teams are having. I didn't know if he ever implemented it or not until the national championship game. Holly Rowe is doing her reporting, and it was the day of the game, and she's reporting on what Georgia is doing, to lead up to the game. What are they doing? And she goes on to say that she spoke with Ron, and next thing you know, she's wearing a FireFly on her forearm on
Shut up.
television. And I'll send you the clip, Justin, so you could post it if you want to. But basically, she's wearing a FireFly on her forearm and says, "I was speaking to Ron Corson, and he says they're wearing this little device called the FireFly, and it's what Stetson Bennett's been using to keep his arm fresh all season long." So next thing you know, I'm getting a million.
Of course you
All of our athletic,
are.
what the heck, Jake? You didn't tell me we could use this on the upper extremity and all this stuff. So I'm having to make sure that people know. Again, we don't have clinical research; it's anecdotal, as in it's just been feedback. But if you want to try it as a healthcare professional or as a strength coach, that you want to implement it with your athletes, we've had a lot of great feedback. We have a lot of baseball programs, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of teams using it, having good success. The feedback is basically, we can stimulate the nerve in the arm. It affects the whole arm. We get a little flutter in the hand, but it's not a aggressive stim, so my athletes don't feel like it would fatigue them. they're still wearing it for about 2 to 4 hours post practice or post game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I used it for uh, any of my guys that had beat up shoulders, right? Like same thing, or if a quarterback doing a lot of throwing. So I mean, I was definitely one of those guys that was like, I don't know if I had heard something, but I'm like, hey, like
Might as well.
I get, yeah, it was literally like, okay, if it works on the leg, can it work on the arm? Because like I said, I got a bunch of them, and it's
Yeah,
like I
might
got
as well.
dudes that are banged up. Like, could this work? I'm always willing to push the needle. And then so I was like, all right, let me ask him first before I just go ahead and haphazardly do it, because it's like I wouldn't have thought to put it on that site. So that's why I was like, all right, let me ask him.
Yeah, I would say the radial nerve is where we probably see it most common. And I mean, we're having more and more. We're expanding into more sports: tennis, swim and dive. We're seeing a lot of tennis players using it. We're seeing a lot of swim and
Shoot, that
dive
makes
players.
sense.
So we're getting more and more, and I hope as we grow as a company, I think we're going to put some more research behind upper extremity to kind of just validate what we're doing. But for right now, when I asked athletic trainers, the feedback has been, Jake, my athletes feel better and they keep asking for it, so we give it to them. Right? I mean, I don't know a better way. I don't know how to say it. At the end of the day, if your athlete doesn't like it, don't use it. Yeah, it's as
No,
simple as that, right?
not only this, for so the listeners out there, it's same exact thing. The same coach that I was talking to about the recovery, he was like, because he's like, listen, man, I'm not about to stick a kid in a cold tub for recovery when he's in there like freaking out. Maybe he's not recovering,
Yeah,
or if he doesn't like a hot tub, like, or if he doesn't like what he's like, I don't want to give. And because we were talking, I was like, look, I used to have like setups like, hey, we're going to do these stations, and within these stations, here are your choices, so that way you feel recovered. And
right.
that's where he's like, yeah, look, like I don't want to give somebody something that they don't want. So like if they don't want the FireFly, deal with it. You got more of them to use for the guys that want it, because like I said, I had dudes that were just rifling through it. And anecdotally, again, somebody that I heard from the Titans, like dudes were wearing it so much that like they were like their skin, like they had to put like lotion on, because they were just like they didn't want to take it off because it was helping them get back. And in the NFL, you got to be ready to perform.
Absolutely.
Like, taking a quick break from the show to talk to you guys about our sponsor, TeamBuildr. If you have any online training platform needs, TeamBuildr is the go-to place. TeamBuildr has the ability to integrate with velocity-based training tools. They have the ability to program and have notes and videos for all of your athletes and your clients. This is your number one stop shop. Been using it since 2019 when I was working at Towson. So I've used it, love it. Make sure you check it out. Go ahead, click the link down in the description. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. So let's get into that a little bit too. Well, let me say this too, Justin. That's a great point. I think placebo effect is a real thing, and if an athlete feels like they're recovering, they're probably recovering. In their mind. So if an athlete is putting on a FireFly and they don't like the way their foot flutters and they don't like the way it feels, my feedback would be, it is a little weird when your foot's fluttering without you wanting to flutter. So just know that some athletes are going to think it's the coolest thing in the world and they're going to freaking love it right out the gate. And then some athletes will be like, "Oh, this is super weird," and that's okay. That's recovery. I would say though, and Justin knows this. After you wear it a couple of times, your body gets a little used to it, and you barely even notice that your foot's fluttering. Like it's a really minimal tick.
I will interject too that like I used to be the jackwagon that was like, I gotta make it the most extreme flutter to the point
Yes.
where like, okay, I can barely stand it. I'll take it down a notch. And then I
You
remember
were
like either you or you were like, bro, like just get that thing moving and you're good.
Yep.
Now I will also say on the package, it's like, oh, obviously it says don't drive with it.
Yeah.
Fantastic, because people would. But it's like, yeah, you could wear it when you sleep. And I'm like, bro, there's no shot I'm sleeping with this on. If you can sleep with it on, more power to you.
Yeah.
I tried
Yeah.
because I had an Achilles thing, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like,
Yeah. That's definitely based per athlete. I mean, we believe it or not, we have a ton of athletes that do sleep in it, mainly
and
for
that's what I'm saying. Good
mainly
for
for
them. Let them
so.
do it.
And just to explain this a little bit better, the FireFly has 7 levels of stem. So when you turn it on, you'll see a plus minus button. So each level increases the stem. And what I tell athletes is, again, you do not need to crank it up as high as you can. I remember when I was in the field house,
Don't be me.
we used to wear muscle stems, and I would look at the guy next to me like, "Hey, what level are you on?" All right, crank that bad boy up, right? Uh, you don't need to do that with FireFly. Literally, as soon as your foot ticks, like your foot will slightly tick, that's the level you need to be on. And when you move, when you're up and walking, your motor system overrides that flutter. So there's no,
It
there's
does. Yeah,
no
right.
effect. You can
100%.
walk around with no issues. But when you're at rest, your feet will dance a little bit. And like Justin said, you don't need to be at level 7. Now, if you're an offensive lineman and you have giant legs and you're 300 something pounds, you might need to be at level 7 for your foot to flutter. I mean, that's just the way it is. So every athlete's going to stimulate at a different level, but the foot tells you what level you need to be on. When the foot moves, stop it there. You're good to go. When it comes to wear times, Justin, I think, and this is something I wanted to touch on too. When it comes to recovery, just general recovery, we'd recommend wearing the device on both legs, and we'd recommend wearing it for about 1 to 4 hours. The research we have on delayed onset muscle soreness shows that if you wear it between 2 to 4 hours, you can basically get your body back to peak performance in 28 hours. So we did a study on rugby players in the UK, which we were based out of the UK, so we did rugby. But basically, what we saw is that a professional rugby team took about 72 hours post match to get back to their peak performance levels, and that was without any added modalities, or it was just the natural healing process of the body. What we wanted to do is figure out what was the most effective dosage or the effective wear time of a FireFly. So we put it on a different wear time to figure out how effective it was. When the rugby players wore the devices for 2 to 4 hours, they were able to get their body back to their peak performance level in 28 hours. So that
How was
speeds
peak
to the body.
performance measured? Vertical jump or
Creatine
what?
in the blood. So they did some creatine kinase studies, and they took
Shit.
subjective and objective measurements. So it was it was based off three tiers. But 28, so from 72 hours to 28 hours is a tremendous
Substantial. Yeah.
amount of time, especially in the Olympic world where you're playing multiple games in a week, right? So again, that's why we recommend maximizing it for 1 to 4 hours of recovery. We would try to get you to those 2 to 4 hour wear times. Now, after 4 hours, it didn't really have a greater effect on recovery. So that's why we would say there's really no need to wear it for more than 4 hours for recovery. Now, let me make a second point when it comes to injuries. Okay, so when you're talking about an athlete that has an ankle sprain, a hamstring, a quad, anything that when it comes to inflammation or swelling in the body, blood flow is beneficial for swelling. So we would recommend the longer the merrier in the FireFly. So if you had, and that's why some of these athletes, when it comes to return to play, or for some of these athletic trainers, they'll put, we'll just speak about ankle sprain because that's probably the most common. If you have an ankle sprain, you can put a FireFly on day 0 as soon as they get the sprain, and that athlete can wear the device for 24 hours. Or if they can't sleep in it, they could wear it for the entire day while they're sitting in class. So think about it. You're getting constant treatment even when you're not in the treatment room, right? So you can come in for PT, you can come in for active rehab, you could go through all your traditional protocols, and they can do everything they want to do as far as rehab and treatment. But then when they leave the facility, that athlete's still wearing FireFly, and you're still getting constant blood flow. Not only that, you're also forcing a slight range of motion. So what's the number one, or maybe not number one,
Mm.
but I remember I sprained my ankle a ton in college. The hardest thing for me was constant stiffness, right? When you get treatment, you feel pretty good right after the treatment because your ankle has been moved around, you've had range of motion, but then you go sleep or you go sit in class for 6 hours and then you try to move again, and what do you feel?
Stiff.
Absolute stiffness, man. So
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a device on your ankle that's causing you to get constant range of motion, your ankle is going to feel a lot more prepared to be active. So that's the feedback we've had on ankle sprains. And I could, if anybody wants to email me or call me, I've got a million different references when it comes to ankles and different things like that. But even, shout out to Jimmy Butler. When Jimmy Butler, everybody's watching the finals, and you guys can go to our Instagram page today. But when Jimmy hurt his ankle, it was highly showcased all over ESPN for that ankle sprain because he obviously he had to play or the Heat didn't have a shot if he wasn't back court. So I know Armando, his AT, pretty well, and the Heat use the FireFly a lot for travel, everything else. But Armando is his main PT, and he sent me a picture the next day, and they had FireFly on him immediately, and I was like, sick, like it's awesome, man, like thanks for the pick, I hope he gets better. What I didn't know though was that Jimmy Butler, who has over millions of followers on his Instagram, would post all day wearing the FireFly. So the next day on his Instagram story, he's walking around New York City, and I'm talking like 20 to 15. If you follow him on Instagram, he does like 50,000 stories a day.
Really?
It's like he documents his entire life.
Oh,
Um,
word?
and he has a full, like a professional camera guy that follows him around everywhere. So he has a pretty cool Instagram because you can see, like, it's kind of cool to follow him. But we had no idea anything was going to happen. But the next day, all over his Instagram, he was wearing FireFly in like every picture because he was trying to get that swelling down, right? He was trying to get that ankle healed. So he was wearing it nonstop. He was actually, there's a picture, it's pretty cool. He's meeting with, I don't know if you know Ronnie Fig at Kith's a big designer or whatever, but he was with Ronnie wearing the FireFly. I was like, we should do a collab, Ronnie. Hit me up. But it was just cool because, like in the most pivotal time, they were using FireFly as and I'm sure they're using every other treatment in the world, but it was just cool to see that.
You
You
get
know,
to be one of them. Like
yeah,
that's
hey,
for like you said, you were employee number one back in 2018, and
that's
now
right.
you're watching a dude that helped win Eastern Conference Finals. Like
Yeah,
I mean, that's got to be like a pinch me moment.
yeah, it was cool, man. I mean, it was and we had a lot of like articles pick it up, like what's on his leg and like all this stuff, and it's just a testament to how how the Fireflies being trusted by the top players and teams in the world.
That's cool as shit. Like, there's really no other way around that. You've talked about your contact. You've talked about other things. I mean, we've teased it a lot. What for anybody that's listening, and maybe they're a young strength coach or AT, PT, whatever. Briefly talk about the lymphatic system and just why this works. Just for anybody that maybe is like, oh, I understand, cardiovascular or the blood and the circulatory system better, but like lymphatic, like, they know the nervous system, but like explain it and explain why movement is key and it cannot be passive.
I mean, gosh,
Superficial, high level. Like, I'm not asking you to dive deep,
yeah,
but
yeah.
just a quick little refresher as to why it matters.
I mean, when you think about blood flow throughout the body it is key, right? And lymphatic system is essentially running. It's the key behind your body. And if you're getting fresh nutrients and reoxygenated blood flow into your system, you're really going to help a ton of things. The body heals faster. You get a lot of that stiffness, soreness, swelling in your body. It's just great for overall body recovery. And I think from a big level, your athletic trainers and yourself are going to be able to see the results that it has from getting the increased blood flow for sure.
Yeah, no, man, it for sure was able to help with removal and pumping of any of those, like you said, harmful pathogens, and that was one of the things that I was always trying to balance too. It's like, hey, how soon is too soon to put it on, or do we, you know, waving through, in the off season, like, okay, you don't need to feel that good, so let's not use it when we don't need it, or only utilizing it before games because, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not too interested in how recovered you are, depending on who you are, right? So it's just waving it and understanding it so that way we can, continue to get that adaptation and get you feeling good. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on and talking again. Like I said to our listeners out there, I'm gonna link the OG conversation with him. I'll link to FireFly below. But if anybody wants to reach out to you directly, how can they do that?
So it's pretty easy. My email is jake@recoveryfirefly.com. And you could always hit me up on that. It's you know if you guys want to get samples or you want to have a Zoom call, whatever it might be, I'm happy to set that up. Again, LinkedIn is good. Jake Wilkes on LinkedIn. Our Instagram is Recovery Firefly or Firefly Recovery. And then my Instagram is just Jake Wilkes 30. So any of those options are super easy. I will respond quickly. Typically, how we work with the team is we'll just get samples out, allow you to actually feel the technology, try it on your athletes, evaluate it, and then we could do an overview call and all of that as well.
Um, as people are continuing to, to reach out and, where would you say, you guys are planning on going in the next, 1, 2, 3 years? Like, does the technology need to change for anybody? They're like, okay, I heard it now. And maybe they're listening, like, so it's, Friday, August 4th for anybody listening now. Let's say they're listening to this 2, 3 years down the road. Is the technology going to change very much, or has the gecko changed, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, so we're in the third version of the technology. So we've done 3 updates, 3 iterations over the past couple of years. The next move for us, and this is hopefully 12 to 16 months down the road is developing and releasing a rechargeable version. So right
Oh,
now,
word.
the device has 30 hours of use per device or per unit. So you get 30 hours in this little unit. It's basically a battery. That 30 hours, you can reuse over and over again. So most athletes are getting about 15 plus treatments per device. After those 30 hours are done, you would dispose of it and grab another pair. And that can be a positive and negative to universities. One is that it keeps the price point. We sell these for below $40 a pack. So you're looking at less than $40, for a pack, which is about $1 an hour for recovery. The rechargeable version will be where you can obviously recharge it. It'll be a little bit higher price point, probably maybe $300 to $400. We haven't marked it, but with any electrode based product, with any stem product, you still have to dispose of the pads after so many treatments, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Like uh, you can bring out the pros and cons in a bunch of different things, but we do know that it would be a good option for for consumers that want to order it and everything else. So we do have that coming. We're working on getting that out, but we'll always offer both units, both versions, just because teams might like, you know, I guess pick your flavor, right? Whichever one you think best fits.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, I'm like, you know what? I probably would still go for the disposable one because it's like after a
Yeah,
while, like you said, you want to get rid of it anyways. But I mean, shout out to you guys for continuing to have the like not just being like, oh, it is what it is. It's like, no, how can we improve and make the product better? So that's awesome, man. I've had a pleasure catching up with you over this last hour. So thank you again for coming on, and have a good rest of the day, man.
appreciate you, Justin. We'll talk soon, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.